Hi everyone. Would wait um a couple of minutes for others to join in. So please say we'll start in the next 2 to 3 minutes. Yep. Hi John. Welcome. Like I said, we'll be starting in the next 2 to 3 minutes. So once it's like 7:05, then 7:05 on my end. That's yeah, once it's 7:05 on my end, then we can start. All right. Hi everyone once again. Welcome to another Happy New Year, because this is like a new year. Um, Welcome to another edition of the DevX working group session. Um, Today would be discussing more about beginner troubleshooting, common beginner blockers. That's we are focusing on things like wallets, CLIs, and tokens. And in today's class, we'll be doing it more in a presentation style, um, in a presentation format. Um, so yeah, let me share my screen in a bit. 1 second. Can you all see my screen? I believe so. Okay, cool. So, like I said, today we'll be focusing more on common beginner blockers. So, common issues that beginners face when interacting with wallets or the CLI or tokens. Now, these things are focused on the Cardano blockchain, right? As a user, you get introduced to wallets, you get introduced to the CLI, all the tokens, and then you hit some roadblocks. What does these roadblocks mean? How can you fix these things? So these are some of the things we'll be diving into today. And yeah, so this is like a rough agenda of what we'll be looking at. So like I said, we'll be covering, what common issues that we see when interacting with wallets. Same for the CLI, same for the tokens, and then we round it up with some universal troubleshooting technique. And yeah, and then we'll have like a summary for everything. So the goal of this session today is to introduce you to how to break things, right? Or rather, how things break. Introduce you to how things break, why they break, and how to fix them fast, right? As a developer, what contributes to your experience is when you build things and then you see things break. And then by you seeing things break, you learn from it. So that builds on your experience, right? So the purpose of this session is to introduce you to these common pitfalls so that when you encounter it in your code base, you can easily spot this as a problem and then you know how to fix it. So some of the beginner problems that people fall into are things like environmental issues, right? Maybe you're expected to run this on maybe like Node version 12, right? But then you're running Node version 10 on your machine. So things like that. There is also the network mismatch. Then there's UTXO misunderstanding, and then there is things like metadata confusion. So some of these beginner problems we would touch in this course, but the general idea is I want you to be able to see or spot an issue and understand what the issue is, and then push a fix. So for wallets, it's like wallets is like one of the biggest tools that developers use in the blockchain space, right? Especially within the Cardano ecosystem, wallets. I mean, everyone builds a wallet, everyone creates a wallet. So it's very very common, right? And because it's common, it means that almost every developer that is interacting with the blockchain would come across some of the issues that we would highlight here. So as a beginner, it is important you pay attention to some of these issues so that when you encounter them, you know how to go about fixing them. So usually what beginners expect is, I install the wallet. Why can't I send or see or sign? Right? That is basically the user's perspective on the issue that is happening. Right? I install this wallet. Why can't I see? Why can't I send? Why can't I sign? But what's actually happening under the hood is that you need to understand that, okay, wallet is a composition of key management and UTXO viewer, right? Funds live in UTXOs, not balances. Network matters, right? Mainnet versus preview/pod. So as a dev, you need to understand that, it doesn't just end at asking the obvious question, which is, this is wrong, right? I installed the wallet and I can't send. But it helps for you to understand that, okay, there are different parts to this. There are different pieces to this. On one hand, we have the wallet, right, which is a mixture of management, key management, and UTXO viewer. On the other hand, you have funds living in UTXOs, not balances, right? And then on another hand, you understand that there are different networks within the blockchain, right? Are you running this particular wallet in mainnet? Are you running it in preview? Are you running it in prod? Right? So all these things matters. So yeah, these are some of the things to have in mind. So as a beginner, right? Because it doesn't just end at you asking these questions, but you understanding under the hood what is happening. So some of the common issues that beginners face or people face when interacting with the wallet is, one of the most common issues is like when the user comes and says, oh, my wallet shows 0 ADA, right? Yeah. So there are a lot of things that might be wrong with it, right? My wallet showed 0 ADA. So the first things first, as a developer, is for you to understand what exactly is the problem, right? What exactly is the problem? So we call it finding the root cause. So one of the ways you do it is you check if the network is wrong, if you're on the wrong network, right? Are we on mainnet? Are we on pre-prod, or are we on testnet? Something like that. Like check to see what network we are in, right? Because if a user, for example, is expressing 0 ADA, right? It might be that maybe the wallet infrastructure is running on the pre-prod network. Meanwhile, it's supposed to run on mainnet, right? So it might be the issue. And obviously, once you notice that is the issue, you switch to mainnet, right? It could be that the issue is a wrong address type, right? So if it's a wrong address type, what do? You copy the address and you inspect the prefix. So usually addresses that, starts with, address, that's ADRR1 without the underscore, right? Usually signifies the mainnet, right? But addresses that that has underscore in between. So ADRR underscore test blah 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 signifies that this is a test net, right? So anytime you see tests in an address, you know that this is a test net. Anytime you see address that's ADDR1 whatever, it signifies the mainnet, right? So these are like common. Yes, it might seem simple, but these are like common issues that people experience, developers experience, right, when interacting with wallets. So it might come off as simple, right? But these are like very tricky issues that when you pay attention to it very well, you can easily spot what the issue is and then push a fix, you know. And then some of the issues, another issue is like things like wallet not being synced. So wallet not synced, right? In that particular issue, in that particular case, what you can do is you can use a block explorer, right? So you can use something like CardanoScan.io to check to see if the wallet is synced. So usually CardanoScan.io is for like, wallets deployed on mainnet, right? You can as well use preview.cardanoscan.io, right? To test, things like addresses or wallets on pre-prod, you know. So yeah, so the idea is, the lesson here is funds exist on chain, not in the wallet. That's one thing you need to have in mind, right? Funds exist on chain, not in the wallet. So yeah. The second issue users usually experience is transaction pending forever, right? Maybe let's say, your user comes and says, "Oh, I just did this transaction, but it's been pending for like hours. What should I do?" Right? Of course, the first approach is to find the root cause. What exactly is the problem? So if you realize that maybe the wallet backend is down, maybe you go on your infra and you realize that, oh, our backend is down, right? A fix is for you to refresh your wallet backend, right? If the TTL is expired, what you have to do is to reboot the TX, right? If you have like things like insufficient collateral, then what you have to do is check the mempool, right? So these are like some of the root causes and potential fixes, that you can do to fix issues like this. Another issue is issues like, I can't sign this transaction, right? A user can say, "Oh, I can't sign this transaction. What exactly is going on?" Right? So when it comes to these issues like this, first thing, like I always say, the first thing we do is what? We find the root cause. So finding the root cause, you might notice that, oh, there is actually a wrong wallet connected, right? So the issues of wrong wallet connected, right? Or issues of like missing signing key, right? To push a fix, you can verify address used in TX, right? So verifying and matching to see if the address used in TX matches with the wallet address. If it is, then that means, you need to explore another potential issue, which is like hardware wallet limitations, right? So for hardware wallet limitations, of course, you need to like, maybe like upgrade your spec in terms of like the hardware. For VC signing keys, you need to check to see if the required signers are in TX, right? So for VC signing keys, go through the required signers and see if all the required signers, are there in TX, right? So these are some of the issues that you can experience, and this is like some of the ways you can fix them. Now, to CLI, right? So the CLI, of course, is like pertains to mostly to us, the developers. So the first one, some part of it pertains to developers, other parts pertains to the users, right? But the CLI is obviously for developers. That is what we use on a day-to-day basis. So this is where most people panic, right? So, so it is important for you as a developer to reframe from seeing the CLI as scary, right, to just explicit. So the CLI, of course, is like your interface, right? It's an interface, just like your graphic user interface. That's your GUI. But this time it's just on the terminal, right? So it's mostly text-based, right? The idea of a CLI is it just outputs everything that the computer says. That's like the interface where you interact with your computer. So if you see an error on the CLI, don't panic, don't be scared, right? This is just the computer giving you information that, hey, look, this is what's happening. So it is very explicit, right? Exactly. So yeah, you can see the CLI as a raw blockchain interface, like I said, right? And wallets are wrappers around CLI concepts. So it's important for you to understand these things and build up a mental model, right? So basically the mental model for you to have in mind is see the Cardano CLI as, you query, you build, you sign, and then you submit. Query, build, sign, submit. You can use a short form, which is like QBSS, right? So that's like a mental model that you should have in mind when you think of CLIs. And what are the common issues we experience in CLI? So the most common issue, of course, is command not found, right? Command not found. So what could be the issue in this case, right? So in this case, it could be that most times it is the CLI not being installed or parts misconfigured. So in this case, all you need to do is run which Cardano CLI. So which is like a Linux command that tells you where a particular program is stored in your system, the path where a particular program is stored in your system. So fix is just to run which Cardano CLI, so that you know if actually the CLI is installed in your system. If it is installed, where it is installed. So that would help you determine, how to like go about it. So always validate tooling before debugging blockchain logic, right? That is the number one thing you always need to have in mind. Always validate your tooling. Always make sure that your tooling works and your tooling is duly installed before you can start debugging any blockchain logic. The second issue you might experience as a developer is invalid network, right? So usually, like I said, we have different networks on chain, right? We have the mainnet, we have the testnet. The testnet can be seen as pre-pod, all of those things. The first step in debugging, like I said, is to finding the root cause, right? So in this case, you can say, you can check to know if, mainnet or testnet magic is missing, right? So you can check to see, okay, what network are we supposed to be running on, right? Or maybe when running the wallet, you can check to see if we even append the network, what's it called? The network command, right? If we even append it to the entire command, right? To be append dash mainnet, that's if we want to deploy on mainnet, or did we append dash testnet magic if we want to deploy on testnet, right? So omitting that part can cause issues like invalid network, right? So if in that case, if you notice you omitted it, then you append the network prefix, suffix, right? So if it's for testnet, you do dash testnet magic. If it's for mainnet, you do dash mainnet, right? So all of this deploys, any of these commands deploys to either testnet or mainnet. Now, something to have in mind is that network mismatch causes 50% of beginner failures, right? So if a particular wallet is supposed to run on mainnet, right, but you deployed on testnet, it's not going to work, right? So you need to have it in mind that when building up your wallet, you need to make sure that you investigate to see if there are potential network mismatches, and the best way for you to do that is by checking the command and see, what is expected of you. Am I supposed to run on mainnet? Am I supposed to run on testnet? And then check the command to see if you add that flag, that mainnet flag, or that testnet. Another issue we experience is no UTXO found, right? So usually when issues like this surface, it could be that the address has no spendable UTXOs, right? Or it could be a wrong address queried. So when we say no UTXO found, right, what we mean is no transaction possible, right? And what it means in the layman's terms is ADA must be unlocked and sufficient, right? Because if there is no ADA, that's the currency. If there is no currency, there will be no transaction. So usually when these issues happen, it means that most times it is as a result of address having no spendable UTXOs, or it could be that the wrong address was queried. So in things like this, all you need to do is to run this command, right? You do Cardano CLI query, you just run this command, it works, right? So by running this command, it tells you, oh, we have, in this address, in this particular address, we have some ADA here, right? Or, if it's a wrong address, it tells you that, hey, this is a wrong address, right? So yeah, for issues like this, you can run this command. You don't have to worry. After this session, we should be pushing the session materials to the website. That's devex.intersectmview.org. So you shouldn't worry too much. You can take a picture of this if you want, but yeah, we're definitely going to share the resource, the session materials, later on the website. And yeah, another issue that we experience on the CLI is transaction build fails. I mean, this one is like very common, right? You build a transaction and then it fails, and then you keep asking yourself, why is it failing, right? So one of the common reasons is you not having enough ADA for fees. It's a very common reason, right? Or you having multi-assets minimum ADA not met. So it still falls down to, it still almost means or almost corresponds to the first one, which is like not enough ADA, right? And then another common reason is a missing collateral. So when you experience any of these issues, some reasonable patterns that you can follow is to query the UTXOs, right? So query the UTXOs is one way. Another way is to pick one with enough ADA, right? Exactly. So pick one with enough ADA, pick an address with enough ADA, so you can be able to cover for fees and you can be able to meet the minimum ADA requirement. And then build TS explicitly, right? So these are like some of the ways, some of the patterns you can follow to fix transaction build failures. And then the last but not the least is the tokens, right? I mean, like I said, wallets is common because that's like what everyone interacts with. CLI is more targeted towards developers, right? But tokens is like where confusion peaks. It's like, that's like what confuses people the most, right? So there is this beginner myth, people think, especially beginners, they think tokens are like ERC20s, right? But in reality, especially when it pertains to the Cardano blockchain, tokens are native assets, right? And no smart contract is required. And tokens always live inside UTXOs. So breaking down the anatomy, let's break down the token anatomy so you kind of like explain, so you kind of like understand what tokens are deep down. So a token is simply policy ID plus asset name plus quantity, right? So you have a mixture of policy ID and then the quantity and then the asset name. That's what makes up a token, right? So basically, no metadata is required to exist. That's like the long and short answer to what token is, or what token is under the hood. So diving deep into some of the common issues you experience, the most common ones is my token doesn't show in wallets. It's very common. It's very, very common, right? But issues like this, first things first, you need to check to see if the wallet UI is filtering correctly. Yeah, you need to check to see if the UI is the wallet UI is filtering correctly, right? So you have to survey the code to check if that is being done right. Or another common cause is no metadata, right? So if there are no metadata, then it's one of the issues. It's one of the things that can cause issues like this happening, or you violate the minimum ADA requirements. So when issues like this happen, of course, you need to use the CLI or the Explorer to confirm existence of the wallet, right? Uh, or of the token, right? You use the CLI to confirm the existence, right? And then you check the minimum ADA rule. So what it means is that you need to check for an address, you need to check, okay, does this address meet the minimum ADA rule? Does it have up to 1 ADA or 1.5 ADA or 2 ADA for this transaction to be able to run, right? So these are like some of the ways you can like fix an issue like this. So basically, the lesson here is you should understand that the wallet UI is not a chain reality. So a wallet UI can be showing you one thing, but in reality, on chain, it is another thing. So things like your token not showing in wallet, yes, in your wallet it might not be showing, but on chain it is there. Right. So that is why for you to potentially fix things, you can explore using the CLI or the Explorer to confirm the existence of the token. Right. So you run a scan on the address and it gives you information on if the actual token is there in the address. Right. And then you check for minimum ADA as well. So that is for that. Another issue developers face is I minted a token but can't send it. Right? I minted a token but can't send it. So usually the common cause is token being locked in UTXOs with insufficient ADA. Right? Again, it boils down to meeting the minimum ADA requirements. So when you can encounter an issue like this, one of the common causes is your token being locked in the UTXO because you have insufficient ADA. And when things like that happen, of course, you push a fix by rebuilding your UTXO with enough ADA. Another common cause is policy script constraints. Right. So for things like this, what you need to do is to inspect the policy script to check if there are constraints that are, hindering you from minting a token, from sending a token. Right. So yeah. So these are like some of the common issues you experience when working with tokens in Cardano. So a key takeaway from this slide, the key takeaway to have in mind from this slide is when something breaks, always ask yourself these questions. The first question you need to ask yourself is, which network am I on? That's the first question you need to ask yourself. Am I on mainnet? Am I on test? Am I on preview? Am I on preport? Right. Once you determine the network you're on, the next thing you need to ask yourself is which address is involved. Right? So you find out what address is involved. And then you can also ask yourself, which UTXO am I spending? Right? And then the last question, but not the least question, is what does the chain say? Not the UI. Because like I said, the UI can be flaky. The UI can miss some things. There might be some, filtering issues on the UI, right? In cases like that, what does the chain say? So for cases like that, what you need to do is check the chain, check the chain to see what exactly is going on. Because remember, the UI is not the chain, right? The UI is not the single source of truth. The chain is the single source of truth. That is where everything, that is what shows you exactly what's going on, right? So yeah, I'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with this. Most crypto problems are in bugs. I want you to understand this. Most crypto problems are in bugs. They are misunderstandings of model. So you might think you encounter a problem, and the first thing that comes to your mind is this is a bug, right? No, it is not. Rather, they are misunderstandings of the model. So if you understand the mental model behind a particular system, it helps you to fix accordingly. So use Explorer because that's one of the ways you can see what's going on chain. Trust the chain on the UI and learn UTXOs early and well enough. If you do these three things, it will be very, very easy for you to debug. It will be very, very easy for you to find the root cause and then push a potential fix. So yeah, this is, you know, this is like years of experience compressed in slides. I want you to take the time after this lesson to go through these resources and take your time to learn these things and master these things and use these things on your local machine. Right. So yeah, that is now. Any questions? Okay. It looks like we have no question. So yeah, I guess we'll call it a day then. Thank you so much for joining. I hope this was insightful. And I hope you learned one or two things from this session. Like I said, we would be publishing these materials on the website, so keep an eye on it. And yeah, there'll be following sessions next week. That's for in case you aren't able to like wait, or yeah, in case you aren't able to join this particular section, you can join next week, later in the evening. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.